Good morning, one and all present here. Myself, Dr. Mansi Patel, Assistant Professor at BITS Institute of Physiotherapy, would like to welcome everyone in today's webinar. Today's webinar topic is dysphagia rehabilitation. It is my privilege to introduce my colleague and today's presenter, Dr. Pragna Lanke. She is an assistant professor at BITS Institute of Physiotherapy, Varnama, Vadodara. She has 6+ years of professional experience in clinical area as well as in academics. She has done her bachelor's from KM Patel Institute of Physiotherapy, Karamsad, and master's in physiotherapy with her specialization in adult neurology and psychosomatic disorders from SDM College of Physiotherapy, Dharwad, Karnataka. She has published 2 research papers in international journals. Before starting the session, I would like to tell that we will be having live question answer session at the end of the topic. At that time, you can write down your question in the message box. If you have missed anything, don't worry, we will put the session on our YouTube channel. Before starting the session, I request all the participants to put their microphone on mute mode and please don't share your screen to avoid chaos. To see the presentation, you can pin on the account named Pragna Lanke. Now, without wasting much time, I would like to request Madam to start the session. Over to you, Madam.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I wish a very fruitful morning to all of you. This session should be fruitful for all of you. That is my only hope. I would like to start my session with a quote by Virginia Woolf. She has stated that one cannot think well, love well, or sleep well if one has not dined well. So my focus for today's session, it is going to be on a condition which affects the dining ability of an individual, that is dysphagia or disordered eating. If we see dysphagia topic on the basis of the rehab sciences or from the perspective of India, it can still be considered a toddler. It is quite developed in the Western countries, but it is still in the research phase if we see from the part of an Indian population. So my objectives for today's session, it is to cover the definition of dysphagia, then to talk about the normal swallowing mechanisms, the assessment of dysphagia, and the swallowing rehabilitation. So the very first thing which we all should understand, it is what is dysphagia? That what is the exact meaning of this terminology? So this dysphagia, it's a Greek word in which this it means difficulty and phagia it means to eat. So it is difficulty in eating. From an anatomical perspective, if I want to define this condition, then it would be a problem which is going to involve the oral cavity, the pharynx, the esophagus, and the gastroesophageal junction. And one more definition which I would like to add, which is little bit into depth and which talks more from a particular clinical perspective, that is by World Gastroenterology Organization. If you see, according to WGO, dysphagia, it refers either to the difficulty someone may have with the initial phases of swallow or the sensation that the foods or the liquids are somehow getting obstructed in their passage from the mouth to the stomach. So there are two things. The first, if the person complains that I have the difficulty with the initiation of swallow, I'm not able to initiate the swallow, then it may be termed as a dysphagic condition. Or if the person complains, okay, the food it is getting stuck in throat area, or the food I feel as if it is stuck in the chest area, then it may be termed as dysphagia. So initiation or the food getting stuck anywhere in the passage from the mouth to the stomach, then it can be termed as a dysphagic condition. WHO has defined dysphagia as a medical disability which is associated with morbidity, mortalities, and costs of care. And now we all should understand that why we should learn this particular condition or why we should learn dysphagia rehabilitation. So according to me, there are two most important aspects which make us or which should make all of us who are part of a rehab team to consider dysphagia also as a very integral part of rehabilitation, because of the first point that it is associated with life threatening complications like pulmonary in that we can see aspiration pneumonia, or nutritional, that is dehydration, malnutritional, which can be a life threat. Second, dysphagia, it is associated with numerous disorders, and these disorders, they directly affect the quality of life of an individual, and it will restrict the individual from participating during the meal times. So you can imagine that what a dramatic or what a drastic effect this particular condition has on the overall health status of an individual. Now, according to me, that if you want to go for a thorough evaluation of a dysphagic patient, or if you want to treat, or if you want to form an effective dysphagia rehabilitation program, then the understanding of the normal physiology of swallowing is must. The understanding of normal physiology of swallowing, it is the fundamental thing if I want to evaluate, treat, or if I want to form an efficient dysphagia rehabilitation program. So let us do a quick revision. I know that all of you must have studied, but we will be doing a quick brush up, because based on this physiology, I will be talking about the pathophysiology as well as the exercises. So traditionally, if we see, there are three stages of swallowing based on the location of bolus. They are oral stage, pharyngeal stage, and the esophageal stage. Oral stage, which is voluntary, controlled by cortical centers. Pharyngeal stage, involuntary, controlled by the swallowing center in brainstem. Esophageal stage, involuntary, controlled by the swallowing center in brainstem and the meyenteric plexus. But the researchers have found that the particular movement of the liquids and the solid food, it differs in the oral cavity and the oropharynx. And due to this thing, they have identified the paradigmatic models which are going to explain the phases of swallowing whenever we are going to drink a liquid or whenever we are going to eat a solid food. So let us see two paradigmatic models. The first one, that is four-stage model, which is being used to describe the drinking and the swallowing of the liquid. And there is a process model which is going to be used for the description of eating and swallowing the solid food. Here you can see in this particular slide that oral phase, it is going to be different for both of them. But pharyngeal and esophageal stage, it would be common for both of. Whenever we are going for swallowing of liquid or swallowing of a solid food, pharyngeal and esophageal stage would remain same. Only there would be subparts in the oral phases. So for swallowing liquid, there is oral propulsive stage and there is oral preparatory stage. Two stages are there. The first one, it is oral preparatory, and second, it is oral propulsive. For solid food, we will be having three stages. First stage, stage 1 transport, second, food processing, and third one, it is going to be stage 2 transport. First, I'll be describing the oral phase for liquid, then I'll be talking about the oral phase of solid food, and then I'll be talking in common pharyngeal phases for both of them, liquid and solid, and at the end, esophageal stage, which would be common for both liquid and solid food. I hope I'm not going too fast. Uh, if anyone feels that I'm going fast, then do just let me know. Because many students have told me in the review that I go sometimes fast. My ultimate aim that you all should be able to understand. So there is four-stage the model for drinking and swallowing liquid. It starts with which thing? If you have a particular glass of water near you, you can take a sip and you can try to understand the phases. You can just do on yourself and try to understand. So this will help you during the exercise phase. Whenever we take a sip of water in the mouth, the first thing which is going to take place, it is the liquid bolus. It is going to be held between the surface of the tongue and the particular hard palate. At that time, the requirement, it is of the intact lip closure to prevent the spillage of the liquid outside the mouth. And what happens during this phase? You can see in this diagram, at this particular part, the posterior part of the oral cavity, it is going to be sealed because of the contact between the soft palate and the tongue base. I have put the cursor of the laptop at this side. You can see here that the soft palate and the tongue base surface, they both will be in contact to prevent the premature leakage of the liquid into the pharynx area. So this is oral preparatory phase. It requires two things for protection: intact lip closure and the intact closure created by the soft palate and the tongue base surface. Then the next stage which is going to start, that is oral propulsive stage. During oral propulsive stage, the tip of the tongue it is going to rise. The tip of the tongue it rises and it will touch the particular hard palate area just behind the upper teeth, and the posterior part of the tongue it is going to drop. It is going to drop, or it is going to form a slope like structure through which the liquid bolus it would be squeezed or it will be propelled down towards the pharynx. And in this way the oral phase it would be ending for liquid and the pharyngeal phase it is going to start. So I hope I am clear with this thing. Then we will go to the oral phase of the solid food. The process model which is being used for description of eating, it consists of three phases which I have already told you. So it will start with the very first, that is stage 1 transport. Whenever the food it is ingested in mouth, here you can see the lady, she is eating paneer and cabbage. So whenever she is going to have that paneer or cabbage, what happens, that we are going to understand with these three stages. The food gets ingested in the mouth, the tongue will carry this food into the post-canine region, and the tongue will rotate it laterally to be placed over the occlusal surface of the lower teeth. So these are the events which take place during stage 1 transport. Tongue takes the food in the post-canine region and rotates laterally the food to be placed over the occlusal surface of the lower teeth. Then onwards, immediately the food processing stage it is going to start. During this stage, the food particles they are going to be reduced in the size. The food would be reduced in size through mastication and moistened through salivation, and this will continue until the food it is ready for swallow. Here, there would be cyclic jaw movements which would be tightly coordinated with the movement of cheek, soft palate, tongue and hyoid bone. They all will be working in tight coordination for the chewing process for reducing the particular size of the food. Then the next stage, which is stage 2 transport, it is interposed with the food processing stage. How? That the food which would be ready for swallowing, it would be placed over the posterior surface of tongue. And the food which remains in the oral cavity, for it the chewing will continue. So both the phases, both the stages, they will be taking place simultaneously. They are interposed with one another. The food ready for swallow, which is placed on the posterior surface of the tongue, it will be propelled at the back of the arch of the mouth, that is fauces area. At the back of the arch of the mouth, it will be propelled, and from there, it will be squeezed down to the pharynx area. There would be the contact between the tongue and the particular palate. There would be the contact between the tongue and the palate, which will be gradually expanding its area towards the backward side. And this expansion of the contact between the two, it will squeeze the bolus down to the pharynx. And from here, the pharyngeal stage, it would be started for the solid food. Now, in pharyngeal stage, what happens? That whenever the particular food, it is going to enter into the back of the mouth and at the pharynx, the particular swallowing receptors which are present at the opening of the pharynx, they are going to get stimulated. These swallowing receptors, they are going to carry the impulse towards the swallowing center in brainstem. And from here, this particular center, it will send the efferent impulses, and these efferent impulses, they are going to be a set of series. They are going to initiate a set of series of the automatic pharyngeal contractions. So automatic pharyngeal contractions, they are the efferent impulses which are going to be generated by the swallowing center. Now, from here, these pharyngeal contractions, they are responsible for propelling the particular food down to the esophagus. But at this point, you should also understand that there are other three routes also where the food can enter. But there are certain mechanisms which are taking place which prevent the food entry into wrong pathway, and it will make the food enter into the correct one so it can reach to the stomach. So what are the other three routes and what are the particular mechanisms that are going to take place, that we will discuss now. The particular bolus or the food can enter back to the mouth, but it would be prevented through the tongue position and the high intraoral pressure which would be produced by the tongue movement. Second, it can enter upward into the nasopharynx, but it will be prevented by the elevation of the soft palate and the elevation of the uvula. Third, it can enter forward into larynx, and this particular, the passage into larynx, it will be prevented by very beautiful four mechanisms. First, there would be the approximation of the vocal cords. Second, superior displacement of the hyoid bone. Third, up and forward movement of the larynx, which is going to lift the glottis away from the mainstream food flow. And the fourth one, it is going to be that the particular, the food, it will be the supraglottic structure, that is epiglottis, it will be tilted backwards and which will seal the opening of the larynx. Yeah, so there would be approximation of vocal cords. Second, there would be superior displacement of hyoid bone. Third, upward and the forward movement of the particular larynx. Fourth, the backward tilting of the epiglottis, which will prevent the bolus entry into the larynx area. Due to this, the closure of the above three routes, the food now has to pass only at one area, that is down to the esophagus. But it will also take place through steps. So the very first step, it would be, there would be the approximation of the palatopharyngeal folds, and this palatopharyngeal folds, the approximation, it will form a slit-like structure in the posterior pharyngeal wall. And this slit-like structure, it will be having a selective action which will allow the bolus to pass with ease. Second, the entire muscular wall of the pharynx, it will start its contraction from the superior part, then spread to the middle part, then spread to the lower part through pharyngeal constrictor muscles. And this entire muscular wall contraction, it is responsible for propelling the bolus down to the esophagus. Then the third thing, that is upward movement of the larynx, it will have the effect on the enlarging the opening of the esophagus, which will lead to the upper esophageal sphincter relaxation. Clear? So whenever the upper esophageal sphincter, which consists of cricopharyngeus muscle, which is a part of upper esophageal sphincter, it relaxes, the esophageal state starts. And the bolus, it is going to enter into the upper part of the esophagus, and this entry, it will lead to the generation of the primary peristaltic contractions. You are aware about peristalsis, a wave of relaxation and inhibition, it is termed as peristalsis. So primary peristaltic contractions, they are responsible for propelling the bolus down to the stomach. If the primary peristaltic wave fails to propel the bolus down to the stomach, then secondary peristaltic waves, they can emerge and they will ultimately pass all the food particles down to the stomach area. So this is the end of all the three stages of swallowing. Based on this particular anatomical parts of the stages of swallowing, we can describe the dysphagia, or we can classify the dysphagia. So if any difficulty it is taking place during oral stage of swallowing, it would be termed as oral dysphagia. If it takes place during pharyngeal, then pharyngeal dysphagia, and similarly we have esophageal dysphagia. Clinically, it has been seen that oral and pharyngeal dysphagias, they are found together. They are seen together in patients, and due to this thing, I am going to talk the types as two, that is oropharyngeal dysphagia, and second, it is going to be the esophageal dysphagia. Briefly, let us see some of the causes which can lead to the difficulty in swallowing. First, for oropharyngeal dysphagia, there are two causative factors which are mechanical and neuromuscular. Mechanical, it may be due to obstruction. The obstruction may be caused by some fibrotic tissue, by some strictures, by some webs, by some the rings which are taking place, or due to some neoplasms, or due to some kind of the lymph node enlargement. Neuromuscular causes, they are many. So I'll be talking based on the location. So first, CNS lesion. In CNS lesion, the leading cause of oropharyngeal dysphagia is stroke. Stroke cases, they are most frequently affected with oropharyngeal dysphasias. Apart from this, any cerebral infarction, brainstem infarction, or the particular the kind of the intracranial lesion, it can lead to the oropharyngeal dysphagia due to CNS lesion. For peripheral nervous system, we can see, or I can tell you some more conditions also, that in CNS lesion, apart from stroke, it is also seen with Parkinson's disease, it is seen in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, it is seen in cerebral palsy, it is also seen in multiple sclerosis. For peripheral nervous system, it can be seen in the conditions like GBS. It can be seen in the peripheral neuropathies caused by botulinum or diphtheria, or it may be caused by laryngeal nerve sensory neuropathy, or it can be seen in bulbar polio. Third, muscle end plate junction disorders, that is myasthenia gravis. We can have oropharyngeal dysphagia. Fourth, muscle disorders. We can see in muscle dystrophy, spinal muscular atrophy, polymyositis, dermatomyositis. These are some of the muscular disorders where the difficulty in swallowing can be noted down. For esophageal stage, again the causative factors, they are going to be two, that is mechanical and neuromuscular. Mechanical causative factors, they may be intraluminal causes. The intraluminal, it means some foreign body obstruction, or it may be mediastinal causes like the lymph node enlargement, or it can be some mucosal diseases. The mucosal diseases can be in a form of a neoplasm or some fibrosis, which can cause the obstruction in esophagus. Neuromuscular causes, any condition which is going to affect the esophageal smooth muscle or its innervation, it can lead to the esophageal dysphagias. If I name some of the condition, it may be the scleroderma or mixed connective tissue disease. In this, we can see the esophageal dysphagia. Now, I am going to talk about the assessment of both of the things, oropharyngeal and esophageal dysphasias. From rehabilitation perspective, esophageal dysphasias, they are most commonly treated with medications or surgery. Surgical intervention, they are preferred for esophageal dysphasias, and oropharyngeal dysphagia, it has found to be very successfully treated with the swallowing exercises. So let us start with the assessment. Here, the first thing which I would like to add, that the particular accompanying condition along with the dysphagia, it should be assessed in detail. We have seen just in previous slide that oropharyngeal dysphagia, it is associated with so many disorders, that if you see a particular patient who is having concomitant limb weakness plus dysphagia, then you are supposed to predict that this may be a nervous system disorder or it may be a connective tissue disorder. So whatever may be the condition, stroke, Parkinson's, their assessment from a physiotherapy perspective, you are supposed to do it in depth. But I'll be only talking about the oromotor assessment part. So first, we'll be starting from the history. The first question, it will be onset, duration and course. Here, the onset, duration and course, it will give us an idea about the type of the condition which is present. That is, if the person tells it is a sudden onset, it may be stroke. If the person tells it's very slow, progressive and intermittent course, then it may be some benign causes. So, it will give us an idea about the condition. Second, you are supposed to ask the patient that do liquid, solid or both, they elicit the difficulty in swallowing. This question will give us an idea whether the causative factor is structural or functional. How? Let us see. If the person tells, I am having the episodes of difficulty in eating or in particular eating solid as well as liquid from the very starting, then this indicates it's a functional cause. That is, it's a motor disorder. But if the person complains that initially my problem, it started with difficulty in solid food, then it progressed to semi-solid, then it went to liquid, it indicates a structural cause, that is a stricture. A stricture which is gradually going to expand, it is going to narrow that particular passage and gradually the person will be finding difficulty with liquid also. So this question is very important if I want to identify whether it's a structural cause or whether it's a functional cause. Third, this is very, very important point. That is, patient is able to localize the dysphagia. What is the meaning of this thing? If the person tells that the food it is getting stuck immediately after swallowing, then this is a case of oropharyngeal dysphagia. Or if the person complains that the food it is getting stuck after few seconds of swallowing, then it is esophageal dysphagia. Clear? If the complaint, it is immediately after swallowing, the food it is getting stuck immediately after swallowing, it is oropharyngeal. If the food it is getting stuck after few seconds of swallowing, then it is esophageal dysphagia. Apart from this, the other differentiating points are for oropharyngeal dysphagia, the patient will complain that the food it is getting stuck in the throat area. Then the person will be telling that there would be the particular complaint of nasal regurgitation. And the third, the changes in voice, that is wet voice, it can be noted whenever the case it is of oropharyngeal dysphagia. For esophageal dysphagia, the person will complain that the food it is getting stuck in the chest area or at the parasternal area. There would be the complaint of pharyngeal regurgitation, and the complaint it will be chest burn or the particular silent symptom of gastroesophageal reflux diseases that can be seen with esophageal dysphagias. No change in voice can be noted. Apart from this, what will be common between both of them? Both will be having the history of aspiration pneumonia and both will have the history of drooling of saliva. Then you are supposed to ask for any other associated symptoms. One of them which I have mentioned, that is weight loss. The weight loss, it will give us an idea of malignant condition. Head and neck cancer, they are most commonly associated with dysphasias. So if you get the history of weight loss, then you can just consider or you can just do a detailed particular examination from a cancer perspective or from malignancy perspective too. Now, on examination. First, examine the oral cavity. Look for the mucosal integrity. Second, dentation. How this factor is important? Because sometimes ill-fitting dentures, they will affect the chewing phase. They will affect the oral phase of swallowing and the person will be having the difficulty. So look for the dentures properly, that are they appropriate for mastication process or not. Higher mental function, this is very important factor from rehabilitation perspective, that we will be getting an idea about the level of the cooperation from the patient, that will this patient be able to understand the swallowing exercises, will the patient be able to obey the particular commands to perform it. So we are supposed to analyze this thing to kind of modify our rehabilitation program based on the higher mental status. Cranial nerve examination, 5 nerves which are actively taking part in swallowing, that should be assessed. That is 5th trigeminal nerve, 7th facial nerve, then you are supposed to assess the 9th glossopharyngeal nerve, 10th vagus and 12th hypoglossal. So 5, 7, 9, 10 and 12. These 5 nerves should be assessed in detail as they are a part of swallowing process. Dysphonia and dysarthria, it has been found that difficulty in speaking, it is associated with the motor deficits during the particular oropharyngeal dysphagias. So whenever the particular distorted articulations or change in voice, then it may signify that this may be a case of oropharyngeal dysphagias. Now, moving to the oromotor examination. You are supposed to remember these 5 points or the 5 Pandavas to understand the particular swallowing examination. Range of motion, symmetry, strength, speed and coordination. But for what structure we are supposed to check these 5 points? For another 5 structures we are supposed to check. So the first one, it is going to be lip. So for the assessment, you are supposed to tell the patient to open and close the mouth. With opening and closing of the mouth, the lip they are going to move. So you will observe the lip movement during opening and closing. Second, you will tell the patient to smile. While smiling, you can note any asymmetry. If one side, the particular lip, it is not elevated, you can note down in your assessment. You can tell the patient to pucker the lips or to protrude the lips, and then you can tell the patient to retract the lips. For coordination, you can tell the patient to do alternate protrusion and retraction of the lips. Pout and then again relax. Pout and again relax. That can be used for the assessment of the coordination. Tongue. You are supposed to assess for the or the 5 parameters. How? You will tell the patient to protrude the tongue out. Okay, protrude the tongue out. Then you will tell the patient to touch the particular upper lip and lower lip with the tongue tip. Or you can tell the patient to move the tongue side to side in the cheek area. That is, take the tongue tip to the right side of the cheek, then take the tongue to the left side of the cheek. Or for coordination, you can tell the patient to take the tongue outside of the mouth and move rapid side to side movement you do. So it will give us an idea about the speed and coordination. For jaw, you are supposed to tell the patient to open and close the jaw to move the jaw from side to side movement. This all movements can be assessed to get an idea about its function. For soft palate, we are mainly concerned with the movement, that is elevation of soft palate. But you all must not be knowing that how to know that this is elevation of soft palate. So for this, I would like to tell all of you to do a small experiment at your home. Okay, and I hope for the cooperation that please do on yourself. Then you'll be getting an idea that what is elevation of soft palate. You can put the particular your fingertip over your nose. Okay, put your fingertip over your nose, and then you tell the particular letter, that is N. Okay, put your fingertip and then tell N. What happens during this part? You all will be feeling three things. One, that is vibration, which is felt over the fingertip. Second, the air which is moving through the nose. And third, the movement which is taking place, it is depression of the soft palate. Still, you will be feeling that I am not clear with the depression of soft palate. So let me make you feel elevation of soft palate. Then you will understand that yes, the other movement was the particular depression of the soft palate. So now again the same thing we are going to do. Put your particular fingertip over the nose, and as it is my webinar, we will use my particular initial, that is P. Okay, so everyone put your finger and tell the particular letter, that is P. Okay, P. What happens during this time? No vibration will be felt over the nose, and the air will be moving through mouth. And the third thing, it is elevation of soft palate. You do now both of them. First, speak the word N, then speak the word P. So, with the particular letter N, the movement, you will feel that the depression of the soft palate is taking place, and with the letter P, the elevation of soft palate it is taking place. So, we will select the words which are going to lead to the elevation of soft palate, which is very much required to prevent the bolus entry into nasopharynx. I hope you all the particular passages which I told you, at that point I told that elevation of soft palate is very essential to prevent the aspiration or regurgitations. So you can tell the words like P, you can tell T, you can tell G. These three words, there are many words, but these three you can remember, that P, T, G. These particular words, they will lead to the elevation of soft palate. Clinically, you can also tell the patient to say ah. Okay, AH, ah, you are supposed to tell the patient to speak. With the ah word, if the person is able to speak, then it indicates that the elevation of soft palate is present. To assess the particular alternate range of motion, the coordination of soft palate, you can tell the patient to repeat the words like pa, 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 or you can tell them to say ta, ta, ta. If the person is able to speak this word alternatively, that pa, pa, pa or ta, 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 it indicates that the coordination, it is perfect for soft palate. Or you can also tell the word pataka. Okay? Pa, ta, ka. This is also used for assessing the histidigokinetic movement for the soft palate. Yeah? Larynx. We are supposed to here again, we will be assessing the elevation of the larynx. How to assess? We will be observing the patient during the volitional swallow. Either with the observation, you will note the particular thyroid notch or the Adam apple which is moving up, that through observation, or you can go for palpation too. You can put the particular fingers, the index finger and the middle finger over the Adam's apple, and then you will be observing that when the person is swallowing the particular saliva, at that time this thyroid notch or the Adam's apple, if it is moving up, it indicates that the elevation of larynx is present. So I hope I am clear with all of these 5 points. So let us move to the next one, that is you are supposed to go for the detailed assessment of respiratory function and cough reflex, as they are very integral part with reference to the aspiration pneumonia. So it should be done in depth. Yeah. Then you are supposed to go for some screening methods. I have selected, there are many screening methods, but I have used the most simplest methods for the description. First of all, dry swallowing method. This method should be done before going for any other methods. This should be the very first method to be done. If it is successful, then you can go for the other methods. What you are supposed to do for dry swallowing? You are supposed to observe the patient how he is disposing the saliva. If the person is able to dispose the saliva, then you can go for the other methods and dry swallowing is present. You can mention in this way. Second, repetitive saliva swallowing test. This is also a very simple and a very safe test. During this, we are going to assess the patient's ability to voluntarily swallow in a repetitive way. Why it is important? It will give us an idea about the risk of aspiration in a patient. What is the procedure? We will tell the patient to sit into a relaxed position, okay, into a rested position. Then we will be instructing the patient that you are supposed to swallow. Okay, you are supposed to swallow. And the best way it is you first you wet the inside the mouth of the patient, because if it is dry, then the person will not be able to swallow efficiently. So after making the person sit in a rested position, you wet the inside of the mouth of the patient with the cold water, then instruct the patient to swallow repeatedly. And then the therapist, it is going to count the number of the swallows either with observation or through palpation. Palpation, I have already mentioned, you can put your fingers over the Adam's apple and just see the elevation of the larynx. 3 or more times swallow within 30 seconds, it is considered as normal. Yeah. Then next it is modified water swallowing test. This test, it is most commonly used for stroke cases or neuromuscular disorder cases, and this has found to be very sensitive in predicting the aspiration rates. What is the procedure? Here we are going to tell the patient to drink 3 ml of water. 3 ml of the water, it will be given to the patient. The person will be asked to drink it. And then as the person will swallow that water, we are supposed to note the particular findings on the assessment criteria. What are the assessment criteria? The very first one, the person will be able to swallow without any amount of the particular choking or change in breathing. This would be the first one. Second, the person will be having the particular, the person will be able to swallow, but there will be choking with no particular change in the breathing. Third, the person will be able to swallow, but with difficulty in breathing and no choking. And the last one, the person will not be able to swallow because of choking and change in breathing. I'll repeat it one more time. What you are supposed to note? First, the person will be able to swallow without any choking or without any change in breathing. In second, person will be able to swallow, but there will be change in breathing, but no choking. The third, the person will be able to swallow, but with choking and no change in breathing. And the fourth one, the person will not be able to swallow due to both of the things, that is choking as well as the change in breathing. If the person is able to swallow without any choking or change in breathing, you can give 2 more trials. That is total 3 times you can tell the patient to drink the water, and out of all the 3, the worst result you are supposed to assess. For the next, it would be investigations. Video fluorographic swallowing study. It is the gold standard method to assess dysphagia. It is the gold standard. It cannot be replaced by any other particular test. The VFSS, we will give the patient the food, it will be mixed with the barium. We all know that barium, it is radio opaque. So whenever the person will eat that barium mixed food and the person will swallow, we can note the phases of swallowing on the particular video monitor. And by looking at that the particular phases on the video monitor, we can predict at what stage or what structure it is causing the difficulty. Yeah, so that can be noted down. If due to some reasons VFSS it is not possible in any patient, then the alternative, you can go for fiber optic endoscopic examination of swallowing. Here you can visualize the pharynx and larynx. Upper endoscopy, it is been used for esophageal dysphagia cases. And we can also do EMG, but it will be only used for the conditions like myasthenia gravis or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. You can go for the surface EMG or intramuscular EMG of the particular muscles which are which are going to be the muscles which are going to be responsible for the elevation of the bone. That is the hyoid bone. Okay, so this you are supposed to remember, and it is the EMG, it is not used for each and every conditions. Now moving to the next one, that is the swallowing rehabilitation. The swallowing rehabilitation, if you see, it is based on 5 principles. The first, amelioration of the underlying disease process, that is if stroke, Parkinson's, whatever condition is present, go for the thorough treatment of that particular condition. Yeah. Second, improvement of the swallowing via therapy, that is swallowing exercises, which I'm going to talk in the next slide. Third, compensatory strategies to improve the safety of swallowing and efficiency. That some body postures which are being used, that is some neck or the head movements can be used to improve the safety during the swallowing process. Prevention of complications, that is if pulmonary complications we are suspecting, then the respiratory physiotherapy should be given vigorously. Nutritional complications like malnutrition, dehydration, if it is present, then dietary modifications we are supposed to do, which will prevent the nutritional one. Environmental modifications, it depends upon the type of the condition. For example, if a stroke case is suffering from perceptual the particular disorders also, then it requires some of the different environmental modification part. But I'm talking in a generalized. I'll give you some idea, but it will be generalized, not a condition specific. It should be generally done. You will make the particular mealtime atmosphere clutter free. You can use the specialized utensils which keep the food into a particular consistency based on the temperature, which can easily be eatable. The third thing, at the dining table, you can put the play cards. The play cards, it would be at that play cards, the particular procedure of the swallowing may be written. That is that after swallowing, you are supposed to cough, so which will prevent the aspiration. So any instruction if you want to give or any swallowing exercises if you are using during the meal times, the play card can be that can be put over the dining table. Next, have them meal with their loved ones. Okay, with whomsoever they are comfortable, have them meal with that particular people, and don't tell them that eat fast, eat fast. Let them have their own time during their meal. If they take too much of time, that is fine. Have them their own time, and don't make their pace faster. Okay, so these are some of the environmental modifications which can be considered for a dysphagia case. Now, swallowing exercise. The particular exercises you all can perform with me. I'll be showing you the videos so you can perform with it, or you can ping to the other Pragna Lange, and there you can see me. If I'm visible clearly to you, you can look at to me and you can perform it too. So the swallowing exercises, they are based on two components, that is specificity and transference. Specificity, it means that whatever task I'm going to perform, it should be it should bring the effect to the desired behavior. That is, if I want the desired behavior to be swallowing, then the task should be performed which should mimic the swallowing. So use swallow for swallowing. That is specificity, particular principle. Second, transference. That is, some of the non-swallow exercises, it can be used to generalize its effect on the swallowing safety and improve its efficiency. How to do this thing? Because some of the respiratory muscles, some of the phonatory muscles, they are common for swallowing function. So we can identify this particular muscles and we can use that non-swallow exercise to improve the swallowing. So for the exercises, I have mentioned the problem list, and in front of them the exercises are there. So very first problem list, it is going to be the person will have the complaint of drooling of saliva, or the food or the liquid, it is going to leak out of the oral cavity. So what should be our aim to prevent the leakage of the food or the liquid outside the mouth? So we will go for lip exercises. Lip exercises can be of two types. The first, we can go with range of motion exercises, or second, we can go with the lips strength exercises. Lip range of motion exercises, how you can do. First, you will instruct the patient that you are supposed to do the exercise in front of mirror. Second, you will tell the patient the first thing to open and close the mouth, which I already told you. This will lead to the particular stretch of the lip muscles. Second, you can tell the patient to smile as wide as possible. As wide as possible, tell the patient to smile. And if asymmetry is noted down on one side, tell the patient you look in the mirror and try to put more effort on the weaker side. And gradually you will be able to note the improvement. You can tell the patient to pucker the lips and then to retract the lips, which I already told you in the previous slide. You can instruct the patient to speak the words like pa, 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 or ba, ba, ba. These two words, if you see, they require the lip movement, and that is lip closure, which is very much essential to prevent the spillage of the liquid. So instruct them to speak or practice this word at home, that is pa, 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 or ba, ba, ba. Yeah. Now, the lips strength exercise, one of the exercise which I am going to demonstrate here, you will instruct the patient to take a gauze piece, which you are able to see here, and then the gauze piece should be rolled, as you can see into this particular slide, or you can take a candlestick, yeah, and then you will instruct the patient to put this gauze piece over the side of the mouth, that is at the cheek area. You can see here, she is putting it over the cheek area, next to the teeth, not in between the teeth, not in between the teeth, at the side area of the cheek, that is between the teeth and the cheek area. Then you will tell the patient to close the mouth and clench the teeth. Close the mouth and clench the teeth. It will require the intact lid closure for the clenching of the particular mouth, and then you will be telling the patient to gradually pull back and forth the gauze piece, as she is doing. She is pulling back and forth the gauze piece and continue until this comes outside. Okay, this piece it continue until it comes outside, and then tell the patient to put it again. So this will improve the lip strength. Yeah, and you can do this with candlestick also, as I told you. Second problem is it is inability to propel the food from the front to the back of the mouth. So here the difficulty it would be with the bolus preparation, with the bolus propulsion, and restricted tongue-based retraction. The tongue-based retraction is very much essential for the propulsion of the bolus. So how to treat this thing? We will be going for two things, that is strength exercise as well as the particular range of motion. So first, these are range of motion exercises, protrude the tongue out of the mouth as much as possible. Then the second exercise, to take the tongue outside, move it to the right side, then move it to the left side. You can instruct the patient to hold it for 5 to 10 seconds also. Based on the need of the patient, hold can also be advised. Third, you can tell the patient to touch the hard palate or the roof of the mouth with the tongue tip, and then gradually take the tongue tip towards the back of the floor of the mouth. This is very important. This will help for the propulsion of the bolus. That is, go from the front of the roof of the mouth to the back of the roof of the mouth for improving the tongue range of motion for propulsion of the bolus. Yeah. Then we will be going for the next exercise. You will be telling the patient to protrude the tongue outside, take it towards the nose tip, and then take it towards the chin area. This will also improve the ROM of the tongue muscles. Now, the exercises for improving the strength. For improving the strength, tell the patient to protrude the tongue outside, take a spoon, and the spoon surface, it is going to push the tongue in the backward direction, and the tongue which is going to push it in the forward direction. The hold or the particular, this contraction can be held for 1 to 2 seconds, relax, and can be done it again. Tongue push forward, spoon it is going to push backward. Second exercise, tell the patient to take the particular tongue tip towards the side of the cheek. That is, do a lateral motion of the tongue. And the particular patient, it is going to use the fingertip and it is going to push the tongue medially. So this can be used as a strength exercise for the tongue. Similarly, it can be done for the other side. Do it on right side, then do it on the left side. The next exercise, you will again tell the patient to take a spoon. With the spoon, push the tongue base in the downward direction with the spoon, and the tongue would be trying to move in the upward direction. So this will also improve the tongue strength. Spoon push downward and the tongue it is going to push upward. Yeah. So these are some of the tongue exercises. Apart from this, you can also advise the patient to speak the words like la, la, la or ta, ta, ta. These words, they require the tongue movement. If you perform on yourself, you will get an idea that it requires good amount of upward and downward of the tongue movements, so which can be found beneficial. Then next is inability to chew the food adequately. Jaw exercises, that is open, close the jaw, move it to the side and side. You can use your hand to give the resistance during the jaw opening or during the side movements of the jaw. The therapist can use his creativity to give the resistance in different ways, and the ultimate aim it is to improve the strength. The next problem is it is ineffective cough to clear the aspirated material. Then respiratory exercises can be advised to the patient. Wet or gurgly voice, coughing during swallow, if it is the problem, you can go for the respiratory exercises or vocal adduction exercises. Respiratory, I'm not going to talk, I'm not going to talk in depth, but I'll be talking about vocal adduction exercises, how to perform. There are two ways. First, you can pin to the second Pragnalanga, and you can see the first exercise for vocal adduction exercise. It is to push both the hands together. If you can see me, you will be pushing both the hands together in this way, and then you will be telling the patient to say ah for 5 seconds in this way. Ah, clear? So push the both hands together and say ah, ah for 5 seconds. Second exercise, you can tell the patient to hold a chair and then try to push the chair forward and say ah for 5 seconds. Whenever the person will say 5 seconds ah word, it will lead to the vocal cord adduction. This will also help, we all know that is, it will prevent the aspiration. The food will not enter into the larynx. So it is vocal cord adduction exercises, pushing the chair forward or pushing both the hands together. Here you can see for 5 seconds your breath, it is going to be held. So there are chances of Valsalva effect which is taking place. So it should be used with caution for the cardiac disorder cases. Yeah. Now the specific swallowing exercises which I am going to discuss. The very first, it is Mendelssohn maneuver. Mendelssohn maneuver, it is the particular problem list, it is reduced laryngeal movement and reduced cricopharyngeal opening. Now see how it is going to work. In Mendelssohn maneuver, we are supposed to instruct the patient first to put the fingers over the thyroid notch or over the Adam's apple. Place the finger over the thyroid notch or the Adam's apple and tell the patient to swallow normally. The person will be instructed to feel the elevation of larynx during the swallow. When the person will be able to understand, yes, this is the elevation movement, my particular fingers, they are moving little bit upwards, then you can move to the next step. In next step, you will tell the patient to gather the saliva in the mouth. After the saliva has been gathered in the mouth, you will tell the patient that you start to swallow. As the person will start to swallow and he or she, he will feel the elevation of the larynx, that the particular elevation of larynx has started. Tell the patient to hold there. Tell the patient to hold there for at least 5 to 10 seconds and then relax. Yeah, so you can see into this particular video, she is first feeling the elevation of larynx, then she has understood their particular feel, then she will be placing it again, she will be swallowing, she is trying to hold, and then now she has released. So this is Mendelssohn maneuver. What is the physiological effect of this particular part? The researchers have found that whenever we are going to hold the larynx into the elevated position, at that time there will be superior displacement of the bone. It is going to take place. That is the hyoid bone. Superior displacement of the hyoid bone will also take place, and both of this superior displacement and elevation of larynx, they have the effect on the particular upper esophageal sphincter. I hope I told you in physiology of swallowing, you all must be able to remember the third point. That is the particular, the elevation of larynx, it has the effect on the enlargement of the opening of the esophagus and it will relax the upper esophageal sphincter. So here as we are holding the laryngeal elevation, it will have the effect on which thing? For the opening of the cricopharyngeal muscle or the upper esophageal sphincter, so the bolus can easily be transferred from the particular pharynx to the esophagus part. The particular exercise of the Mendelssohn maneuver, you can tell the patient to perform with liquid also. Once, first thing, let them, the patient will understand what is elevation of larynx. Second, perform it with saliva. Third, it can be performed with liquid, and then it can be performed with solid food also. Next, it is shaker exercise. Shaker exercise, the indication they are going to remain same. That is the problem list, it is going to be reduced laryngeal movement and decrease USA, the particular opening. Here you are going to instruct the patient to lie in supine position and they can lie on a floor or a firm bed, and then you will be telling the patient to do chin tuck. Do chin tuck and go for the head flexion, take it towards the chest. And as you can see here, the model, he is doing the head flexion, taking it towards the chest, and the person will be trying to look towards the toes. He can try to look towards the feet, and the hold would be kept for 30 seconds to 1 minute. 30 seconds to 1 minute, the hold it is going to be kept, and this is static type of shaker exercise. If the hold is kept for 30 seconds, 1 minute, it should not be kept more than 1 minute by any means. Okay? It should not be kept any means. 1 minute more, it cannot be done. You can advise, you can hold for as much as you can, or 30 seconds or 1 minute. and then you will be telling the patient to come down after 30 seconds or 1 minute and take rest for 1 minute and do it two more times. So total 3 times the patient is supposed to do. 30-second hold, 1 minute rest, 30-second hold, 1 minute rest. This is the second exercise, that is dynamic shaker exercise. Here, the person will be going for 30 consecutive head rises, 30 consecutive head rises without any pause, and then the person, it is going to take rest for 1 minute, and again 30 head raises, rest for 1 minute, then 30 head raises. That is dynamic type of the shaker exercise. Yeah. Then the third one, this is chin tuck against resistance. If due to some circumstances, person is not able to go in supine position, we can advise the patient to go for shaker exercise, which is a modified version, chin tuck against resistance in sitting position. The patient can take an inflated ball or a towel roll. It should be placed just below the chin, and tell the patient to compress that ball or the towel roll with as much as force as they can. Take it towards the chin, and the chin tuck should be maintained throughout the motion. So this is a modified version of shaker exercise, chin tuck against the resistance. Now you will ask me that how the neck flexion it will improve swallowing. So here I would like to add that it has been found that the particular muscles that during neck flexion there will be the action of the particular thyroid and the suprahyoid muscle. Suprahyoid muscles, they are responsible for the end range of motion of the neck flexion. So with neck flexion, the suprahyoid muscles, they will become active. There will be the superior displacement of the particular bone, and which will lead to the elevation of larynx, and ultimately elevation of larynx will have an effect on the upper esophageal sphincter opening. Yeah. So now moving to the third exercise, that is Masako maneuver. Masako maneuver, it is used for decreased tongue base retraction and decreased posterior pharyngeal wall constriction. Here the instruction it would be, tell the patient to hold the tongue tip between the upper teeth, just gently bite the anterior part of the tongue between the teeth. Okay, don't bite it vigorously, just gently bite it, and then tell the patient to swallow. What will happen when the person is going to hold the tongue tip between the tip of the anterior part of the tongue, it is held between the teeth. This will open the posterior pharyngeal wall bulging. Okay, it will lead to the posterior pharyngeal wall bulging, and it will decrease the space between the tongue base and the posterior pharyngeal wall opening. So it would be easy for the bolus to slide down. So this position should be held, and then tell the patient to swallow. Yeah. It decreases the space between tongue base and the posterior pharyngeal wall, and it initiates the pharyngeal muscle contractions. Masako maneuver. Next, the other particular problem list, that is decreased laryngeal elevation and decreased pharyngeal contraction. We can use effortful swallow. What is effortful swallow? That is in some of the condition, if muscular weakness is noted down, the person is swallowing, but that particular contraction is not enough to propel the food downwards, then the particular principle of effortful swallow, it is use swallow for swallow treatment. Use swallow for treatment of swallow only. Here you will instruct the patient to swallow very hard, as if the person is trying to swallow a grapes. In this way, the person will put more effort. So whatever food there are chances of getting stuck, it will be propelled downwards. It will recruit more motor units, and more motor units recruitment, it will put more kind of the effort for propelling the food or the bolus downwards. So this is effortful swallow. Here you are supposed to instruct the patient to take the tongue tip just behind the upper teeth, or touch the hard palate and behind the upper teeth, and then tell the patient that आप जिस तरह से you are just trying to eat a grapes, in a whole grape you are trying to swallow, that much of effort you put. So this will be termed as effortful swallow. It will put more motor unit recruitment, and it will clear the residues. Decrease velar elevation, velar strengthening exercises can be used. Here, you can advise the patient to take a straw. Initially, a small straw length should be used, and as the improvement is noted down, the straw length can be increased to improve the velar strengthening. Decreased vocal intensity, oropharyngeal residue, and impaired oral transit, we can go for Lee Silverman voice treatment. This is very interesting treatment. It is standardizedly used for Parkinson's patient. Here, you are supposed to use two things. First, amplitude, and second, pitch of the phonatory muscles. You will instruct the patient to say ah as much as loud as they can. Don't tell them to shout. They speak as much as loud they can. And second, for pitch, you can tell the patient to speak a word from low pitch to the high pitch. That is, start from E in a low pitch, then go for E, which will be in a high pitch. So these are the type of the phonatory muscle exercises which are used for Parkinson's disease and which will have the improvement in the swallowing. So I hope you can, this particular exercise is a part of transference principle component which I told you. Train the particular phonatory muscles, and with this we will be able to get the benefit in the swallowing. Yeah. Then the next step is going to be the weak cough. For that, we can go for the expiratory muscle strengthening. Advise the patient to exhale into a device which is one-way spring-loaded. One-way spring-loaded particular device which a pressure release valve where the threshold will allow the particular valve to be released. Okay, we can set the particular valve threshold at 60 degree or 80% of the maximum pressure, 60% or 80% of maximum pressure, and when the pressure is being reached, the valve will open up and which will train the expiratory muscles. The compensatory strategies, you can go for the dietary modifications. Here, in a very simple way, I'm going to describe you that if the person, a patient is coming, he's telling that I'm not able to chew properly. The preparation of bolus, it is a problem for that particular patient. There is delayed swallow reflex, which is noted down. What should be the particular food choice? It should be pureed consistency food, because pureed consistency will not require vigorous chewing. The propulsion, it is going to be easy. And the third thing, if you use liquid, then if there is delayed swallow reflex, it may leak into the pharynx area and cause aspiration. But pureed consistency, they will not leak so easily. So for delayed swallow reflex, we can advise for this particular type of the pureed consistency. Different settings, they have their dysphagia diet protocols that the patient can take from the particular center and follow it for the safe swallowing for a safety purposes. Yeah. Then this is also a very interesting technique, that is thermal tactile stimulation. It's a facilitatory technique. Here you are supposed to advise the particular patient to perform it before the meal, or you can perform during the meal time also. A laryngeal mirror which is of 0,0 size, or a metal rod, or you can use spoon also. If the person is not able to afford, you can advise spoon also, and that should be dipped in the chilled water for 10 seconds. And then that particular laryngeal mirror, it should be stroked 5 to 6 times in the anterior posterior pillar area, which is soft palate area, anterior posterior pillar area for 5 to 6 times. And this stroking has found to be beneficial to initiate or to improve the speed of pharyngeal swallow. Yeah. So this is a facilitatory technique which can be used. The person, and based on the research, it has found that if a person performs during the meal one time thermal tactile stimulation, next 3 swallows, they are found to be easy for the patient. So it can be used as a short term and not as a long term therapy. Now the postural, the head position strategies. If you are able to see delayed swallow reflex, decreased tongue base retraction, chin tuck. Now in chin tuck, you will advise the patient to tuck the chin towards the chest, the spine should be erect, and then tell the patient to swallow. How the benefit will be obtained? Whenever we do chin tuck, at that time the base of the tongue and the posterior pharyngeal wall opening, the space, it is going to get reduced. The space, it gets less, so the bolus can easily propel down. So chin tuck can be advised to the patient. Supraglottic swallow. Supraglottic swallow, you can see here in the video. First I'll explain you the procedure and then you can see in the video. So how you are supposed to perform supraglottic swallow? It serves 2 purposes. First, it will be for the protection of airway, and second, it will help for the swallowing. The initial instruction to the patient, it would be that you take a sip of water. After you take a sip of water, tell the patient to take a deep breath and then to hold it. And take the breath in such a way as if you are trying to lift something, a weight which is of good amount of that particular part. So a good amount of effort should be put by the patient. Then hold it. Hold the breath and then tell the patient to swallow. And at the end, after swallowing, tell the patient to cough. So let us see here in the video that how it is to be performed. The first thing, she's taking a sip of water, the very first step. Then she's deep breath, hold it, then she has swallowed, and then she has coughed. This is supraglottic swelling. How this is found to be beneficial? That breath holding, it will close the larynx, so it will cause the airway protection. And second, the swallow, as the larynx it would be closed, so it would be easy for the food to propel down to the esophagus. So airway protection. And second, why it is called as supraglottic? Because breath hold, it will also lead to the backward tilting of the epiglottis. So supraglottic, it includes epiglottis. So it will lead to the closure of larynx as well as backward tilting of epiglottis when we breath hold. And so the swallowing can be done safely. For decreased laryngeal closure, similarly, you can go for chin tuck and supraglottic swallow exercises, which I already described. Decreased pharyngeal peristalsis, if you see unilateral, the particular paralysis of pharyngeal muscles, you can advise head rotation. Now, this is very interesting to know that which side head rotation should be advised to the patient. The patient should be told to rotate the head towards non-paralyzed side. Sorry, it should be told to rotate it towards the paralyzed side. So consider if my right side is paralyzed, then the head should be rotated to right side. So what will happen during this thing? Whenever I rotate the head to the one side, the side at the rotated side, the piriform sinus or the piriform fossa, it would be narrowed. And to the non-rotated side, the piriform fossa expands. What is piriform fossa? It's the fossa between the larynx and the pharynx area. It's a part of pharynx. So if I turn it towards the paralyzed side, the piriform fossa it will expand, the pharynx will expand, so the bolus can pass easily to the pharynx to the esophagus. So advise the patient to rotate towards the paralyzed side. Effortful swallow, which I already described. Double swallow, it means that if due to weakness, the person has the history of aspiration frequently, we can go for double swallow. Tell the patient for safety, do 2 times swallow. That one time patient has swallowed, residue may be present, so swallow it again. So if residue are there, it will get clear. So double swallow can be advised to a patient with a history of aspirations. Alternate solid liquid swallow, it works on the similar principle. Person is eating something solid, residue, if you feel that there are chances of presence of residue there, liquid it will clear it. So take solid bite, take liquid, take solid and then take liquid. It can be advised to the patient. Now, the body positions here, briefly I am going to describe it. For severe dysphagia, you can go for the position which I have shown in this particular picture. The person should be elevated with the 30 degree of rise. In this, what are the physiological benefits? The oral cavity, it would be raised. Esophagus, it is going to get lower. Neck extension should not be there. You are supposed to put a pillow and the bed should be raised up to 30 degree. And then tell the patient to swallow. So there are less chances of aspiration into this particular position. Second, you can go for sitting position. This will have a benefit that the person will be mentally alert if the person eats in sitting. You can tilt the head up to 60 degree. The bed should be tilted up to 60 degree for the safe swallowing and to consider it as a sitting position. Sideline position, it is used sometimes if the person is not allowed to sit. Then you all should remember this thing, that the person should be advised to lie over the non-paralyzed side. Always advise the patient to lie over the non-paralyzed side, because the stronger side it will allow the particular bolus to pass easily. So sideline can also be used. Now the combination of body positions, you all can just see in this picture, and what all positions they are being combined. First, the person is lying in sideline position. So which particular sideline? The person will be lying over the non-paralyzed side. Second, the head is rotated. Which side? Towards the paralyzed side. Third, chin tuck. The person has done chin tuck. And fourth, the person, it is into a sitting position. So there are 4 combination of body positions. In this way, we can also use based on the need of the patient. Yeah. Now, at the end of the session, I would just like to tell about some of the particular techniques which are into research phases. That is, first, EMG biofeedback. It has been used for the particular dysphagic patient. You can put the surface EMG over the particular the neck area or the anterior neck area to target the particular muscles that are going to be the hired muscles. And then on the video monitor, the person can note the muscle contractions. So it is still into research phase, the EMG biofeedback. Neuromuscular electrical stimulation, you must have heard. It can also be used for the improvement of the particular dysphagia, and it is still under the research phase. And definitely the physiotherapists, they would be having an upper hand for neuromuscular electrical stimulation, because we know that the particular amount of intensity which would be required for the muscle contractions. So that can also be used if the person is suffered from dysphagia. So these are my some of the references. And at the end, I would like to tell, okay, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, you can ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really an informative session. You have covered it in a way that it has become very interesting and easy to understand. Uh, Now I request participants that if you have any questions, you can write them in the message box. I repeat, participants, if you have any questions, you can write down them in the message box. Okay, ma'am, I think there are no any questions from participants' side. Uh, you have covered it in a very informative way. Thank you
Okay.
so much, madam, for sharing your valuable knowledge with us.
Okay.
I extend
Ma'am, one
my
minute, Mansi
thanks
ma'am.
to our honorable.
Hello, Mansi ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So at the end of the session, I
Yes,
would
ma'am.
like to, yes, especially I would like to thank Principal Sir and Vice Principal Sir for giving me this, the particular opportunity, and to allow me to take this type of topic and to read so with so many much students to share the knowledge. And thank you for the cooperation of all the participants for being so much patient during the session. Thank you so much. And thanks to you also, Mansi ma'am,
Thank,
for moderating this event. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I want to extend my thanks to our Honorable Founder, President and Chairman, Shri Jagdish Bhai Patel Sir, and our Joint Managing Trustee, Srimati Kamalban J. Patel Madam, for their constant guidance. I like to thank our CMD, Shri Dhruv J. Patel Sir, and our Campus Director, Hardi Patel Ma'am, for their motivation and support. I like to extend my thanks to our Principal, Dr. Mehu Jaldav Shah, and our Vice Principal, Dr. Sarfaraz Nawaz Shah Sir, for their constant encouragement and support to do such events, due to which we can able to perform such events in such a good way. I want to extend my thanks to Avni Vasant Madam, HOD Computer Department, for the technical support, and respected Gade Dada for wonderful graphic designs. I thank all the faculty members without whose support such events are really not possible. Lastly, I want to thank all the participants for showing their interest in the session. I once again thank everyone for making this program successful. BITS Institute of Physiotherapy would look forward to see you. Thank you. Have a good day.